Hi, class. Welcome to this initial lecture. The purpose of it is to cover the elements of news and to provide you with an introduction and discussion of what this class is about. Let's start with discussing the term mass media. That's broader than what this class is about, but just for the sake of discussion, let me tick off what it includes. Most of the stuff you know: TV, movies, music, all the social media, radio, and even the printed media all comprise the mass media. One way to think of it is all the information you get that you didn't observe directly or get directly from somebody almost certainly came to you via the mass media. For our class, we're going to focus on three things: news, public relations, and advertising. News is what happened. That is a straight account of what occurred. Although today, with politicized environment, you don't always get a straight account, you get a biased account. Public relations is what I would like you to believe about a person, an institution, an organization. Advertising is me wanting you to buy something. And the gold standard for that is having you buy what I sell, such as McDonald's or things on Amazon, for life, that you become a customer for life. But for all intents and purposes, this class will really just focus on news and public relations writing. Um, we like to use and almost always use the simple past tense in this kind of writing. We don't use the present. Now, let me interject here that I'm not going to go word by word what's contained in this document, because it's going to be posted. I'm only going to touch on things that I think need to be specially emphasized. One thing that's really important is devising the correct way to think about writing. Don't approach writing as something to get out of the way and accomplished any which way or haphazardly. That'll lead to a bunch of words that are poorly organized and not clearly conveyed. So you won't end up communicating what you hope to communicate. Now, in these days, after you leave college, everything you write will end up in the public domain because you're going to be writing online. As you know, once you write something and post it, it's there forever. Even if you delete it, it's there forever. How you portray yourself, be it on your Facebook page, your Instagram, or Twitter, is you. That's not just words you wrote, it's your public persona, because most people won't meet you, they won't see you, they don't get to know you as a person except for your circle of friends and family. So it's important that you write in a admirable and effective and coherent fashion. Now, one thing you should keep in mind as you prepare to leave college, even if you or when you get to the end of your college career, assuming you're going to get a postgraduate degree, is this: teachers are paid to read what you write. That includes me. But once your college days are over, your written communication will become part of the marketplace of the cyber world. That is, you writing and posting may or may not get read. You post something on YouTube, you may get a lot of viewers, or you may get very few viewers, or almost none. Some guidelines to writing: tell readers what you're going to tell them, and then tell them. Another way to think about this is saying what you're going to say straight away. Let's say you're going to write about uh, things to do, the do's and don'ts at UCI. You would say, I'm going to tell you 10 things you should do and not do to be a good student at UC Irvine. That right away tells a reader what to expect. Then you will go into the 10 things that they should do or not do. This is in sharp contrast to the media writing to the academic writing that most of you have been doing. That's long, leisurely, it takes an extended period of time to get to the punchline or the bottom line. Here, the bottom line comes first. Use only the words that are necessary. Wordiness and redundancy make your writing boring and make readers want to stop, and in fact, will stop reading. Don't use jargon. People say, I have issues with such and such, when really what they mean are problems. They say somebody passed away. Well, they didn't pass away. They died. And there's nothing shameful or discomforting about that, because that's a natural part of life. Remember this, after your academic career is over, people will be able to pick and choose whether to read you or not read you. So your professional success will depend on how good a writer you are. Be precise as possible. That means don't use a long time ago. What does that mean? 10 years ago, 22 years ago, 50 years ago. So be specific. If you know the time, even if it's an approximation, provide that. Be specific about what happened at meetings and games. Don't say a game was held, a meeting was held, and the like. Next, you see here the inverted pyramid. The inverted pyramid is the template for media writing. It organizes how you write. At the very beginning, you have your lead, which is the first paragraph, and we'll talk about in a little bit. It's 35 words. You go from the most important to the less important. You go from the general to the specific. Now, this is a format that has been used for well over 100 years in newspapers, and it's meant for readers in a hurry. And more than ever, readers are in a hurry, especially if you're online. The lead, as I mentioned, we talk about that, and here we go. It answers these questions: what, who, when, where, why, and sometimes how. There's a few examples. Let's hit a few tips. Do tell the reader the very most important fact in the first few words. That usually is the what. Let's say there was an accident on the 5 freeway in Irvine yesterday afternoon and 3 people were killed. You would start by saying 3 people were killed in a car accident on the 5 freeway in Irvine yesterday afternoon. Notice that 3 people being killed is the first thing that comes out of my hands into the keyboard. Be specific. As I said before, don't say a few or many. Be precise. One exception to being precise is using names of unfamiliar people in the lead. Don't say somebody, don't use the name of somebody in the lead who you wouldn't know. Jane Doe of Irvine was killed in an accident in the 5 freeway yesterday. If Britney Spears goes into psychiatric care, of course you use her name. Names that are well known actually make the story more intriguing, more interesting, because people want to read about people that they know about. If Rihanna is hospitalized, you use Rihanna. Let me skip down here to bearing leads. Bearing the lead means putting the most important information at the bottom of the end of the lead. That is a taboo, because you want to hook the readers and you give them the most important and enticing information right off the bat, you're going to have a better chance of getting people to read what you write. Don't write empty leads that don't really tell you anything. If you say a meeting was held or a game was played without talking about the results, then you have an empty lead. Don't start by reporting where or when something happened. That comes later. Now, media writing has characteristics that distinguish it from other kinds of writing, that is to say, academic writing. Tips here are not a comprehensive guide. Now, we use the Associated Press style book. I've posted a summary that will say what is a lot of what's written here, but the rest of it you can read yourself. So there's really no point in me going through it. I just wanted to point out to you that there is a style book and you can see the various categories: names, titles and occupations, numbers and addresses. Me saying it is not going to make it stick any better than you reading it. So we'll skip right through that to attribution, which does need me to amplify on that topic. Attribution is citing your source, just as you did in academic writing when you've done research papers. You would cite sources. You have a sources page, a bibliography. Well, within the text, not a separate sheet, within the text you say according to whom, who said it, where did the information come from? Did it come from a report? Did it come from the police? Did it come from a spokesman for an organization? Who said it? If it's their words exactly as spoken, of course you set those off with quotes. Our favorite word to use is said, right here. Said is a neutral term. It just means that somebody said something. You said proclaimed or expressed, that's too much, too wordy. Claimed is a word that conveys some dubious quality of what was said. Somebody said the world was flat, you'd have to say so-and-so claimed, and because you seriously doubt, in fact, you know that that's not true. All leads for this class should be no more than 35 words. You can go over one or two. They can be as short as you deem necessary. Again, do not bury the most important information. Body paragraphs, the ones that follow. Again, a lot of this is contained in the syllabus, but I'll repeat it here. No more than 40 words. That's shorter than you're used to, but there's a method to this madness. Internet readers don't like to read long paragraphs on a computer screen. Think of your own reading habits. If you see a page full of text, you're going to probably not bother to work your way through it. Whereas if it's a book, you can put it down and come back to it. Typically, once you log on, you're gonna log off and not come back for an hour or two, at least. Next, we have here a story that provides a good example of the inverted pyramid. Notice here the lead, which I won't bother to read to you, you can read it yourself, has a dateline. Where did this happen? New York. Where did it come from? The AP, Associated Press, and it tells you about a Japanese pitcher getting paid a lot of money. Just 18 words and you have all the information you need. The story, which you can read at your leisure, goes on to provide more and more details, less and less important details, but in fact, greater detail. Now, what is news? Sometimes it's very obvious. A plane crashes, a major earthquake strikes somewhere in the world, some important person dies. Those are big, obvious news stories. But then there are elements in news. There's not a one good definition, but rather things that make news news. One is timeliness. Timeliness is something that happened today, yesterday, or was just now discovered. Proximity. A minor earthquake here in Southern California is of major interest to us, but if it happened in Nepal or Mongolia, a minor earthquake there barely deserves mention, if it deserves mention at all. Relevance is, does it really impact you in any sort of way? If there are municipal elections being held in Kathmandu, that's pretty irrelevant to us. That there's going to be a new city council in Kathmandu, so that would fall outside the realm of news. Importance is a gray area, and this really depends on the news judgment of the reporter and the editor. Let's say that parking fees at UC Irvine are going to increase by $100 per quarter. That's important and relevant because those of you who are students and will continue to be students here will have to pay more money. Oddity. Oddity is just something that's so strange that it deserves mention. I recently read a little short story with a photo of several men holding a 17-foot long boa constrictor captured in Florida. That was of interest because, that was an oddity of interest because it was just so out of the ordinary. Human interests are stories that involve people doing remarkable or interesting or cool things. So let's talk about social media and fake news. Fake news is news that isn't really news at all. They're stories that happen that have no factual basis. And the social media and the internet has allowed this to happen. It's a phenomenon because we have nobody filtering a lot of information. Somebody could put up a website and put out things that are not true, rumors, and the like. So how do you tell real from fake? There's no simple way, but there are some things to look for. One is, are the sources of information authoritative? That is, are they coming from the police, government spokesmen, eyewitnesses? Have the mainstream media picked up the stories? The mainstream media will have checked out the authenticity. So if they picked up the story, then it's probably there's some factual basis. Finally, is the website in question one with an obvious cause or political bias? There are many websites that are advocacy, that represent interest groups, and what they publish has to be taken with a grain of salt. Final words. Learning to write effectively is a learned skill. All of you can learn to write effectively. You may not be brilliant writers, but you will become a effective writer through repetition, dedication, focus, and a strong desire. Most of you weren't born knowing how to drive. If you are drivers, you will remember the many steps involved in learning how to conduct and navigate a car safely, prudently, and confidently. Well, folks, that wraps up this lecture. We'll talk again soon. Thank you for paying attention, and hasta luego.